on you'll be working on Harbinger cover in the back.
Yeah, that's the idea.
I made edits. That's the idea, as in like we'll see if I get to it. I might just come here to listen to you guys talk.
No.
You sure?
Yes.
Really? Honestly, don't know if today will be. I don't know if today is going to be a full hour. I truly mean that I don't think today is going to be a full hour. We'll do two chapters of Behind the Shroud. In the meantime, Evan will be working on a cover for the upcoming Origin novel. And then we'll answer some questions for anyone that joins. So if you're joining, welcome to our Facebook Lives, where it's me, Matt, Kurt, so used to calling you Candor, and Evan with us. Let's start off as we always do. Evan, how you doing, man?
Yeah.
Oh, my man. I love you. God, I love you. If you're joining us, let us know where you're at. Let us know what path you're walking. I just had over 300 kids today tell me what path they're walking. We're going to get to that in a second. But first things first, second things second, I'm exhausted. Second things second, Matt, what a cool little thing you got on your head. What is that? Let's see. We show it off, baby. Do a spin for us.
Take a look. Ready?
Wow.
Slick.
What a cool hat you got there, man. And is that embroidered? Is that an embroidered?
It's embroidered too.
Unfound Adventures golf hat?
Come on, man.
You're telling me there's a potential golf dad that could be watching that says, how do I get my hands on that? Matt, what would you tell him? How do you get your hands on something cute like that?
That would be a good question.
Okay.
Well, you'd mosey on over to shop.unfoundadventures.com.
Shop.unfoundadventures.com. Wow.
Pop in here, to the accessories, and lo and behold, it's the very first one. Check that out.
Other things you can get a long sleeve embroidered, and on the back actually has a picture of Buntu, the god of Bastunia. Shout out Evan. His art is on clothes now. Did you ever think that would be the day, Evan?
Yeah, I sell art on all kinds of things.
Son of a bitch.
It wasn't today that happened first.
You never thought it would be in Bastunia. You can also get a Jorunn the Jester koozie. How cool is that? You can drink with your favorite 10-foot tall Jester. You can get it in cans and in high tops. Wow. We do not support. Make sure you drink responsibly. If you're a kid, you can also get whatever your beast type sigil is. If you're an explorer climber, we got explorer climber shirts. If you're a builder maker, we got builder maker shirts.
These actually look really sweet.
I really like the Defender ones, man. I like the red and black. We have sweatshirts in there. We have hats in there. We have comics in there. We have posters in there. Go check out shop.unfoundadventures.com. Why would you want to wear anything else when you can support your local comic nerds? I will be getting the hat and sweatshirt today because I find it amazing. Kurt, which one are you going to get?
I'm going to get them all.
Kurt, this one look good on you, bud.
Little crop hood.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. I can see Candor in that.
Absolutely. Love it.
Do you sell those spandex too?
Yeah, right on the bottom.
Not yet. Right. Not just yet.
I believe we already got someone picking up the bucket cap. You can get children's books on there. You can get our novels on there. You can get fanny packs on there. Wow. We are nerds. If you'd like to be a nerd, feel free to pick it up. Also, Matt, do you have pictures of today? I think I sent over to you. For anyone curious, I am absolutely exhausted because I spent a half a day with an elementary school. We are now crossing the threshold of over 2,000 kids. We've walked through this experiential, imaginative incubator is what Matt likes to call it, where these kids get to learn a little bit about me. They get to learn a little bit about Bastunia. They get to learn a little bit about what we're doing, and they get to create a calling in the world of Bastunia. So all these kids today got to figure out if they're a builder or a defender or explorer, and what type they would be. And then they got to draw it out. I saw a flame woman today. I saw a deer with the tail of a snake. I saw, what else did I see? I saw Spider-Man. I think there were 2 kids that drew just Spider-Man. A guy with hook hands. The things that come from kids' imagination is incredible. So that's why I'm exhausted, because I don't know if you know this, Evan. Children are kind of exhausting. Did you know that?
That's funny. That's real funny. Look at the funny man.
God, I miss you. So that's what we've been doing today. Thanks for sharing, Matt. I'm going to pop over to Evan, and this is what Evan will be working on today as we do our live table read. Oh, no. I just removed Candor on accident. Evan will be working. Look at this cover.
Easy.
Can you zoom it in, Evan? Yeah, zoom further out.
Lick.
Yeah. Wow, look at that. Start squinting, everybody. Wow, that is. So you have you've made it more of a shadow for the guys.
They're not. It's not done, my man. It's got a ways to go.
We know, man. We know. Let us like it though.
I told him yesterday, oh shoot, I already bought the poster. I didn't realize it wasn't finished yet.
I
Go for a
don't think
mint
he bought it though.
one day.
My dad already picked it up, dude. People are posting it at like
Yeah. Okay. All right.
room.
Yeah.
Where
They're hilarious.
What do you like about it right now? And obviously, you said it's not done. What's the next thing you want to work on? But you do have to tell us what you like about it right now.
Not a lot. Not a lot. That's all right. It'll get there. It'll get there.
What is it that you want to work on next?
All of it. It's really just nothing but graphic shapes, and
I'm just muting him. I'm muting him for the time. Evan's in a timeout right now. Matt, what do you like about it?
Yeah, so we Evan, we love you, man. We started out with a little bit more of like a gloomy color, and I really actually like the blue shift to a little bit more of a green shift. I love the cliffs over on the left-hand side. You know what it speaks to me is it gave me this sense of I want to go there and I want to explore and I want to see what's over top of that shell, and just seems vast. And I have like a yearning to get up off that beach and say, Avon, Argus, where we head.
The thing that I wrote down is like, I like that this really feels like a fantasy world. When I look at this, I'm like, oh yeah, these kids are in a fantasy world. Like you said, I want to go there. That's what I like about it, man. And then have you given any edits to Evan? I mean, clearly he's got 18 for himself, but did you give him any edits, Matt? Like things to bring into this?
Not really edits, just things that I'd like to see as part of it to be congruent with the scene in the book that this is depicting. Palms. Yep.
Information. For those curious, we think all edits are just information. That way people don't have to get sad when someone gives edits and not think that they're like attacking you. We talk about that. We talk about that on our TikTok channel. So if you're on TikTok at Unfound Adventures, we are 1 follower away from 1,000 followers, which allows us to have a clickable link in our profile that can tell people about what we're doing, and they can go right to our website and pick up stuff and help support the cause. So if you're on TikTok at Unfound Adventures, without further ado, Matt, should we jump into today's table read? Is there anything you'd like to say about the origin novel and what's to come? He's gone.
Yeah, I'm here. It's getting really close. The editing it's a more difficult process than I even realized. I mean, we're like 6 in our 6th edits, and I really want this to be perfect. You know, it's not my first rodeo. I don't have any more excuses like that was my first book. I'll do better next time. It's like number 10. We should be masters of our craft or well on our way, at least not making the same common mistakes. So I'm just trying to make it great. And yeah, I mean, Evan kind of knows this process too, I'm sure, where you tinker at something with your nose just so close to it that at times you can only see the flaws, and where everyone else is like, wow, that's amazing. You're like, no, you're dumb. It wasn't, but it's getting there. It's actually getting to a point where I really feel like people are going to love this. And if this is their way of discovering Bastunia and some of the other stories, then this would be a phenomenal entry point.
I thought it was cool when you started to create it. We like talked about that. We're like, what if this is the way someone discovers our world? Like, we think it's these comics, but it could easily be, believe it or not, the origin novel. And I think it impacted some of the writing. Do you try, and this will be a good question before we go into reading, and talking about where we're at in Behind the Shroud. And if you have Behind the Shroud on you, make sure you go pick it up. We will be on chapter 15 today. But as a writer, Matt, is that in mind of like, I'm going to write the first book in a series as if this is the entry point, no matter which book it is? Because you've written two now.
Certainly not in the comics, like book 2, 3, definitely not. But everything else, yeah, like Behind the Shroud was designed to be an entry point, and it's got a glossary, even if you feel like you're drinking from a fire hose at some point. We do have a lot of open loops, but that you can count on me to close that are relevant to you enjoying the story within that story. So I'm not going to answer every single question, but in the story that I'm telling in this book, that will be resolved by the end. So you'll still have the sense of resolution, even if you feel like I must read on to learn more about, other things that are happening in the periphery of the story. So yes, except for second and third in the series.
Yeah, but for sure. But it's like, if someone picks up Behind the Shroud, they can learn about our world as if it's the first book they read. If they pick up Harbinger, they can learn about it as if it's the first book they read. Chapter 1 of the comics as if it's the first book they read in the story. And you're going to have, we call them open loops, right? Like, we're going to have these open loops of, hey, am I supposed to know what's going on? And you have to suspend your, what do you call it, Matt?
Not disbelief.
It's not disbelief. Hold on, we're waiting for it. This is where we
Hey,
unmute.
ma'am, I'm on the call, okay?
Oh, dang, I was going to unmute Evan, and it was the worst time.
Yeah. I think you just have to suspend your desire to know, like to begin defining things. At times you say, I'm going to need to be a little patient here. I'll get the answer. Even though if I don't know exactly what's going on right now, you can trust that, it'll play its part. And if you're really perceptive, I will say that the book is written to be read twice, so that the second time through, you're like, oh, that's just that much deeper.
Yeah. I think it's very weird for people that are like 2 chapters in. They're like, I want to know what's going on right now. I don't know what's going on. This is confusing. Like, that would be a bad book if like every single time you're curious of what's going on, they just told you. Like, figure it out for yourself. So speaking of figuring it out for yourself, we're going to come into this mystery novel. Matt, you're about to let us know where we're at in the story and why this chapter is so crucial. But before we do that, not only will you and I have a chapter today, of course, Mr. Cyrus Candor will have a chapter as well. Kurt with us. Question for Kurt. Other than Emblem Cyrus Candor, if you were reading Behind the Shroud, just as a reader, what character has jumped out to you the most up until now?
At this point in the story, too, because we haven't met Charm, we haven't met Rob's character, so you can't answer at the Altweiser.
Well,
you can. You can if you want.
In terms of like the character reading in the book or the voiced character?
That's a big one. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to say Jorunn because this is a great voice character. I mean, if you were reading this and like there wasn't an audio drama, which of these characters do you think you'd be drawn to the most?
I feel like I see more eye to eye with the thought process and the way that Pendelve thinks through certain scenarios.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so I feel like I've been kind of more drawn towards his character.
It's been like that cool, level-headed. I mean, anyone that's following, I would see this as the genre of the Why Done It, where we're following like the main character being more Pendelve and how he's like coming up against a secret, and then there's this sharp turn. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt. Yeah, there's some character progression. There's an arc of Pendelve, but it's not like this huge, massive arc. It's more of like, hey, here's what's going on, and you're seeing how he adapts to the crazy surroundings that unfold around him. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, very much modeled in the sense of like a Sherlock Holmes, where if you read everything or watch everything about Sherlock, like eventually some of his demons have to be addressed. But in any given book, like the point is never to address Sherlock's demons or and to get into that or have a resolution on that. It's an interesting piece of his character. You might feel like this is going to catch up to him at some point, and it does at times, adds complications to his ability to solve cases. But that's Pendelve's arc in a sense. It's like there's clues, things that he might need to address, things that are like maybe speaking to the world building at large when we get to Jones time. But we're here for the mystery. We're here for the why done it. We're also here to see not if the heroes escape and survive, but how and I guess do all of them make it through in the end? Because Jorunn seems pretty bent on sacrificing himself.
I think it's a really cool part of the why done it, where it's like you as the reader, you're just kind of along for the ride, and you're like, how would I solve this? It's almost like you're trying to crack the code before Pendelve does. Okay. Without further ado, we're 16 minutes in. Matt, let us know like where we're at up until now, and then what this first chapter will be, because it's going to be a long one. So buckle up, Candor, because you're not reading in it.
So here we are. We were in the town square that has just been destroyed by one of Jorunn's beasts, the beast named Adder, who's kind of like cow dog. We just have visited the coroner and have heard that the coroner doesn't feel like she can speak her mind around the beacon. The beacon has pretty much made up her mind, and the coroner has an alternative theory that the beacon didn't want to hear. And so Jorunn is in the gallows. Actually, he's in a pillory built for beasts. So he's like hunched over in something that would like say hold a lion. His neck is pinched in this thing. His arms are pinched in this thing. And finally, Pendelve was like, here's my opportunity to have a real discussion with this guy. Still teetering on the brink of madness. Is he mad? Is he as strange as the beacon and Candor seem to believe that he is? Enough that they'd say, we've seen enough. He destroyed the town. He's been somehow affiliated with these murders. So we've got our guy. It's time for Pendelve to really dig in and understand who's really behind the eyes of Jorunn.
Yeah. I think this is the first time too they're meeting in the flesh. Like they've met through callings before. I mean, they met briefly as Jorunn's getting tied up. But this is the first like moment they have just these two together.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you are excited about? I feel like when we first did our own table read, but it was just on my phone, this was the chapter you chose. Why this chapter that you love so much?
We really get some philosophical meat on the bone here. We dig into the psychology of Jorunn in an interesting way. I think he shares his perspective on the world. This is where you really get to know him and why he is the way that he is intentionally, not like, just because his mind is running wild. That might be a little bit of a spoiler, but I think we'll get there. You get to see Pendelve putting everything together, and he's not really picking his side. He's just like gathering the evidence. Toward the end of this, actually Candor's chapter, we'll really get to see him start to pick his side. But it's just it's a vital chapter for establishing what's to come.
Well, without further ado, we're diving in. I've said without further ado 3 times now, so that typically means the show starts. We are coming right off of 2 chapters where Saw and Jorunn were first communicating with each other with him in the pillory, and then this flashback to how they grew up, how Sawyer got her name, and now we are on chapter 15, cross-examination. Is there one last thing you wanted to say, Matt? I can say without further ado one more time.
No, don't do it. Chapter 15, cross-examination. Years earlier, Pendelve experienced his first run-in with madness when he investigated a string of odd drownings in Broken Chain. Children throughout the water-faring region learned to swim before they could walk. In that region, a disproportionate amount of people were born with mariner callings, those that lived full-time in the water. Despite the fact that every islander was born wet behind the ears and grew up within arm's reach of a shell, drownings were exceedingly rare. The people of the region were equipped to attain a symbiosis with the sea, and their lifestyles nurtured a natural respect for it. In Pendelve's experience, the islanders would sooner walk to the Earth Temple than be overcome by the surf. Madness appeared in the form of an extremist. One day, a man came upon the wreckage of a barge, rifled through the flotsam, and found a stranger's journal. Whether the contents of the journal were a work of fiction or a doomsday manifesto made little difference to the discoverer. The words foretold a time when fire would rain from the sky, man would turn against man, beast against beast, and society would claw itself apart by tooth and nail. Mankind would be reduced to slathering savages, ranking amongst the most contemptible filth. The circumstances of how the man chanced upon the scroll exacerbated his delusions. In the man's mind, the sheer impossibility of his life unfolding in precisely the manner it had until the document's discovery forced a marked change in him. He took the journal to heart, believing it to be a prophecy. The words in the journal spoke of unparalleled hardship, torturous circumstances, and mankind reduced to barbaric horrors. Thus, he concluded the deity meant for him to discover those papers. His very purpose depended on saving his fellows from such damnatory actions. Possessing a deep, albeit misguided, compassion for the victims, he wished for them to retain their purity. He drowned those closest to him, one after the next. He believed he spared them from the harsh scrutiny of an afterlife spent rehashing their wickedness. Madness. Pendelve knew the difference between manic and psychotic pathologies and garden variety strangeness. Coating one's skin in white, possessing abnormal hobbies, speaking in obscure riddles, and being giant to the point of grotesqueness seemed to be the latter. But stronger than his feelings was the evidence. When held up to his eye, he had seen through the hagstone into a gray world where the coroners, and their beast spirits flickered like colored flames. That was what the Jester wanted him to see by tossing him the stone, why he had said, "Seeing is believing," to Luke. Jorunn must know that his word alone could not convince of realms hidden beneath realms. The Parser, though still with more questions than answers, began formulating a new theory. The gray world seen through the stone may be filled with more than the reflections of living beings. The realm may chamber entities of its own. Though keeping a surveying eye pressed against the hagstone's portal, he detected nothing that could be construed as such on the march back to town. By the time Pendelve returned to Lucidus, he had thought differently about Adder's destruction of the East Quarter. The bovine hound had hagstones affixed to its eyes, which would limit its sight to the gloomy gray realm. On the other side, there were no buildings or boulders or inanimate objects. Only living, organic material imprinted itself upon the gray realm. Even corpses, void of animating essence, vanished into a background of mute nothingness. The people, beasts, plants, animals, and fungus existed, correspondent enough that the Parser could look into the gray and recognize the reflection of the observable world. Peeling through the whole, now, the numerous people who lent themselves to the restoration effort could be matched to roving signatures, each of a unique color. Dozens of beings drifted through a gloomy dusk like fireflies. Some moved slowly, others dashed. Some burned bright and red, others soft pink, and one radiated light-sucking violet. Plants glowed a faint cyan. Animals varied in hue. A sprawling mycelium web illuminated the ground in pulsing yellow. The spindly network shimmered with awareness, responsive to the human life forms who moved about in its proximity. The Parser's attention drifted to a crowd of people and their beasts standing close together. When their light signatures overlapped, a variety of colors meshed into bright white. Beneath their feet, the fungal web sparkled as if engaged in an exchange of energy. Suddenly, like a spark leaping from a fire, a torrent of light charged through the web toward a solitary blue radiance, someone's beast. As the two merged, something happened. Through Pendelve's unimpeded eye, he watched as a beast aurically hoisted a column of stone. Through the portal, he witnessed a rippling, pearlescent halo emanate from within the beast's blue. Aura, he cheered. In the gray, he could see Aura. He stopped his celebration mid-flourish, suddenly aware of how he would appear to onlookers. On the inside, he hurrahed. Witnessing the movements of Aura was a long-time dream of his. Lacking Aura sight, though the ability appeared in less than half the population, always stuck in his craw, making him feel less of a parser than his gifted colleagues. He could have danced. However, right then, more important things beckoned. With some effort, he channeled his enthusiasm back into the case. 12 victims lay dead of dehydration. While dehydration was the cause of death, such was but a symptom of a larger ailment. Should the victims have died purple in the face with vomit and excrement on their clothes, the official cause of death may be dehydration, though with clear cues back to the cause itself. Under those circumstances, poison or untreated sickness could be the culprit. Yet, according to the coroner, none of the 12 victims' bodies actually showed signs of chemical distress. Still staring through the hagstone, Pendelve tried to conjure up a culprit in his imagination, but came up short. A large part of him held back, careful not to force a theory. While a malevolent entity stalking about the gray realm fit the larger narrative, a cautionary voice told him he was too eager to exonerate the jester. Nevertheless, the fact that the captive had 3 beasts spoke volumes about his character. The deity did not distribute extra callings on a whim, as far as he knew. Aside from himself, he was aware of only 4 others across the continent with a quadripartite mind. While the distinction did not sway Beacon Sorrento, it meant a lot to Pendelve. Only through rigorous devotion to one's beast does it evolve, which requires walking in attentive alignment with one's path. Devotion to 3 paths, through 3 callings, heartening, profound evolution in each one of them as Jorunn had, even going so far as to awaken second masteries, and at least one of them displayed a self-knowledge that rivaled an Eld wiser. Could such a man murder 12 people? If so, what had he used? Certainly no poison nor contagion known to Pendelve. The chances of his guilt was slim, but not zero, which brought the parser to a crucial junction in his investigation. It was beyond time he and the jester had a conversation.
Are you sowing a new garden, Saw?
The hunched-over fugitive mumbled as Pendelve approached.
Oh, never mind. Sorry, old habit. Who is it that walks in neglect of his shoes? Splash, 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 splash. This one is on a mission with no time to dodge puddles.
Hello, Jorunn.
Parser.
Jorunn declared. Guilty as charged.
That must be your favorite expression.
Pendelve smiled. It's up there. I also enjoy acquittal when the mood strikes.
In cases of innocence, I suppose.
Jorunn inquired.
Don't worry, bub. I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
Pendelve asked, Is that so? The unyielding pillory prevented the painted jester from nodding, so he grunted instead. Would you like to profess your guilt? Pendelve asked him, feeling an upwelling of dread rise in his stomach. He was not expecting a confession, after all but convincing himself of the man's innocence just moments before.
Guilt?
Jorunn questioned. You are right where you're supposed to be?
Ah, Parser. Many years ago, I took my yoke upon myself. It felt much like this pillory here. I discovered a frightening thing. I could do anything, be anything. I might have become the beacon of order. And then right now, it would be your neck pinched between these boards. Point is, everything marched in one direction until one day I received a valuable piece of advice. I took it. Then things began careening in another. I find myself a long way down that path now, where old friends have become enemies, and where old fangled ideas still cling to life. You look at this pillory and you see a jester in disgrace. But what truly is persecuted here is change. What is order if not a persistent, stubborn superposition? And in such an ordered world, what role doth the jester play?
Pendelve observed the painted man from his bare feet to his wild hair. Agitation. Jorunn laughed heartily.
Very good, Parser. Very good.
Was knocking down the East Quarter, then, all in the name of shaking things up.
That was not intentional.
I didn't think so, Pendelve admitted. The role of a jester. What is it? To be disorderly, he guessed. It made sense that a society bent on order would need something to churn the waters from time to time to prevent stagnation.
To remind us that we are all actors in a grand illusion. It's the finest theater on a fantastic set, put on by performers who, on occasion, forget they are pretending. These plays come in one of two choices, comedy and tragedy. In moments like this, when the setting is in mourning, turmoil afoot, a hero captured, and heavy-handed justice in rote, it might look tragic. I promise you, though, at this airlessness about the world will not be filled with sobs in the end. It's always laughter.
Okay, will you die to raise their spirits?
And miss the satisfaction of my plan coming perfectly together?
Pendelve did not bother hiding a smile since Jorunn could not see it. I thought you might be planning something.
Your character is an astute one, Parser. You don't have as many lines as me, but you know how to make them count. To the world, my character appears to be a fool who doesn't know enough to come out of the rain.
He turned his hands in order to catch the steady drops in his palms. A soup of pulp and seeds began to accumulate until he slurped the mixture down like a refreshment.
To hear them tell it, the jester is uncouth, stubborn, vulgar, stupid. He has lost his way, a vagrant, nebulous force who isn't interested in survival. Yet the world looks up at a cloud and asks, where is it going? What is its purpose? What's its use? They cannot fathom the nature of the aimless, pointless, useless, which is the nature of nature. This is the joy of life, Parser, to be engaged in the pregnant now, dismissive of the past, unconcerned with the future, as a participant in nature, with nature. If a jester has an aim, it is to be like nature, but that is to say his aim is aimless. The pleasure of mankind is in conquering, subduing. It is to take the meaningless and give it meaning, bit by bit, until nothing exists for no sake. Soon, uncorrected, everything will function to satisfy man's scheming. A cloud will only be allowed to exist should it be delivering rain. A fruitless, flowerless, not-filled tree that cannot be used for food, perfume, honey, or lumber must be cut down, for his very existence is in violation with purposefulness. A jester is a correction used to balance the overstress. The more pointless a jester appears to a person, the more important.
Jorunn actually made sense to Pendelve. The world, especially under the thumb of a strict beacon, became rigid and lifeless under the guise of safety. In such a place, no greater crime existed than being misunderstood. The serious cannot recognize foolishness as their medicine because they cannot recognize their sickness. Thus, to exist without an easily identifiable purpose makes one into the gnarled tree that must be felled, if only to make room for something more normal, more practical. I'm reminded of an Islander expression. Sometimes mad, sometimes nude, now a scholar, now a fool. Thus they appear, the free men.
That's good. I've never been to Broken Chain. Alas, would that I could go where I am not needed. Alas, I am at present not appearing as much of a free man now, am I?
Not exactly, Pendelve agreed. And as a man with a plan, nor do you appear all that aimless. Jorunn sighed heavily.
That's my problem, I guess. That's what separates me from a true fool. I love them.
The people.
Yes, astute one.
You are right where you're supposed to be, Pendelve remembered aloud. How does being locked up in a pillory benefit the people? Why allow yourself to be captured? What good comes from being lambasted for an accident and for deaths that you did not commit? This cannot be all in the name of levity.
I have some time. What do you think?
The parser could not be certain. I will answer that question after you answer one of mine. Jorunn grunted his approval. What lives in the gray realm? The jester lifted his sizable cranium to look at Pendelve. He had a twinkle of admiration in his eye, and something else, disbelief, or maybe relief.
I call them shroud hounds.
What are they?
Parasites.
Jorunn answered.
Leeches. They prey on our emotions.
Pendelve suspected as much. Where are they?
You have not seen one because they hide from the rain.
They hide from the rain. That was a missing piece, a subtle cog that brought two halves of Pendelve's theory together. The parser suddenly understood why Jorunn had given himself up, why he appeared almost pleased to hear of his sentence, why he went humbly to the pillory, why he made sure that Pendelve got the hagstone and encouraged him to look through it, and why he went to special lengths to ensure his hanging waited until the storm cleared. You're using yourself as bait, the parser said, so that everyone can see the threat for themselves. That is why you wish for us to wait till the sun is shining to hang you. If it was still raining, the shroud hounds would not show themselves. Beacon Sorrento would have no reason to disbelieve her current certainties. It was a wild plan, displaying delusions of grandeur. The parser had a lot more questions. How do you know they'll show up?
I don't know, but I have a theory. Naturally, the hounds have to sustain themselves. Very little exists within the shroud in the way of sustenance, but not nothing. Since you have looked through the hagstone, you must have seen the vibrant impressions humans make within the gloom. My theory is that they have preferences. Pain, sorrow, anger, fear, anguish, to name a few. When everyone gathers to watch me die, I don't think the hounds will be able to resist.
Your plan is risky, Pendelve pointed out.
Risky or bold?
He asked, in a manner that made Pendelve imagine him crossing his arms and looking down his nose with aplomb. Risky. You will summon your beast to return when the sun comes out, so Beacon Sorrento can begin the proceedings. But then she will take your callings and lock them up, out of connective range. Your mind will fray. Your hanging will be carried out unless, and this is a big unless, before you are asphyxiated, the hounds, who are invisible, mind you, show up so that you may capitalize on the opportunity to redirect guilt from yourself to them. But it isn't just the beacon who will need to be convinced, but the entire mob, which, as you accurately predict, will be filled with pain, sorrow, anger, fear, anguish, to such a degree that they will not be of sound mind. And your plan relies on reasoning with them. My prediction is that you will die before your beasts break out of their cells. If the hounds do show up, they will have plenty of innocent fodder to select between, and you will be cursed, well, beyond death. There will be those amongst Lucidus who name you an accomplice to the hounds, accurately deducing that you lured the threat. More will die. You will not clear your name, but tarnish it for generations to come.
Well, no. Maybe. All of that is possible. Darn it, Parser. When you say it with such confidence, I find my own bleeding away. It's already raining on my head. Why must you rain on my plan too? Wait. Okay. No. I am finding my certainty again. You don't know what my callings can do. They cannot be locked away for long. Here is what will actually happen. After my beasts are taken away, I will make a grand fuss of having my mind frayed. In actuality, I will be in no great discomfort. Before Saw can even get the noose around my neck, Adder, and Venus will arrive. In the pandemonium, we will sneak away. We will lure the pursuers to the beaches around the water temples, a place with hagstones for all. Then, with their own two eyes, they can see the truth of the shroud hounds. All it will take is splashing them with a little bit of water, watching the hounds turn into pungent sludge, and my name will be cleared.
Pendelve huffed. The parser's mind lingered on Jorunn's confidence in his beast's abilities. Adder's display the night he had arrived laid its two masteries bare, but he was less certain about what Venus and could do. I have already deduced that Adder has auric control and auric projection. I've felt the effects of those amulets Venus passes around. I'm guessing it has external creation and auric transmission. Keep me honest.
You're perfect. Go on.
Jorunn praised. To go on, Pendelve would have to speculate. What can do? Jorunn said.
Can jump.
Can jump, Pendelve sneered. You were born with were you not? Are you telling me that your first beast has external talent alone?
You would be more impressed if you'd seen jump.
Jorunn argued. Pendelve grunted. He let it go for the time being. Second question. All it takes to kill the Shroud Hounds is a bit of splashing.
Yes, Parser. I told you. They hide from the rain. They are completely helpless against water.
Jorunn said with annoyance. Torrents of rain streamed down his face, accumulating in white beads at the end of his hair, his beard, his nose, and his chin. In frustration, he shook his head, scattering milky droplets in every direction. Pendelve held his hagstone up to his eye. I look at the river and see nothing but the glow of the occasional fish. There's no water on their side. Does that mean water needs to cross into the shroud to kill them? Jorunn nodded.
You understand.
Is there any other way to send water across but through a hagstone?
Not that I know of.
Why then would they be afraid of the rain? It cannot reach them. The jester shrugged. It would have been impossible for Pendelve to tell had his bulky shoulders not clumped against the wood of the pillory.
One can never be too careful.
The parser did not love that response, but he left it alone for the moment. That explained the dehydration. If when a hound attached to a person, it transferred its own hydrophobia. After a handful of days, a person would collapse into a sleep they would never wake up from. It was a sad way to go. Death by organ failure, killed by a hydrophobic parasite. Jorunn's response, presuming the hounds avoided the rain out of caution, nagged at him. When Adder killed the one I witnessed, they plunged into the river. Water would have then poured through Adder's stones and doused the hound, Pendelve said.
He killed the other two with the same tactic.
By tricking them into the water.
Something like that. Tricking is a fine word to describe it, I guess.
Okay, the parser said, sighing. Despite my inability to see water in the shroud, the hounds must be able to sense it. They must. It sounds as though they avoid it like the plague, Pendelve said, thinking of the trader who died of dehydration 10 steps away from a drinkable river. He raised the small portal to his eye once more. He scanned the city to be sure. Just as before, a scattering of colorful orbs coincided with the movements of man and beast. He allowed himself a moment's distraction, observing aura. He had always longed to be able to see it. The fact that there was nothing he could do to muster it up or win the capacity to see aura had been his life's most persistent nuisance. But now, with the help of a simple stone, he could do it. An involuntary grin spread across his lips.
Hey, Parser,
Jorunn asked, his voice thick with distress.
Do you see any signs of the storm breaking?
Not tonight, my friend. You're in for a long one. The jester wiped his forehead. His finger came away with a streak of white, chalky paint.
Do you believe me?
He asked. Without taking the hagstone away from his eye, Pendelve answered, It's like you said, Jorunn. Seeing is believing.
Ooh, and seeing, that's a long one, man.
It was.
Oh my gosh. Congrats. So we're seeing these two. Any thoughts at the very end of that, Cyrus Candor? Kurt?
Sounds like he's coming around.
I really like, because what I try to do with Jorunn here is like, is this dude mad? Because there's a lot of times where he's just like rumbling on and just like talking and talking. He's away from his callings, mind you. And the further we get away from our callings, the connective range can kind of fray at our mind. But like I have a friend where it's like sometimes he just feels like he's talking madness and he'll have like 2 or 3 sentences. And I'm like, you're a genius, dude. That's what I kind of feel with Jorunn here. Matt, how did you want to set it up? And then we're going to bring Evan in to see what he's been working on. Love you, Evan.
Yeah. So I see these two. They're really not dissimilar. I mean, they're both questing after the truth. Jorunn really he cares about people. And if you know, I mean, you'll find out toward the end of the story what is the advice that he was given that changed everything, and why his life was heading in one direction, careening even, and then changed basically out of word to become who he is. I think gazing into his philosophy on who he is and why he is the way that he is, it's like probably something that not many people do. I think it's really endearing, and Pendelve should see that and should be able to read through that and say, hey, this guy's genuine. He's the genuine article.
I like one of the things that you said of like, they're very similar, but like, as Kurt was saying, he's like, I lean towards how Pendelve looks at things, right? Like that calm, cool, analytical, like calm, cool, collected, pragmatic mind. It's like they're very similar, but then their paths are, one is like very cool axis and one is very vibrant. So it is kind of fun to see a similar-esque character in philosophy have two characteristics about them that are very differing.
The way, a buddy shared this with me one time, is like most of the world, let's say, I know it's kind of small, but like objectively, let's just pretend that this rock right here is the truth. And like, this is the way that the whole world looks at the truth. And these are the words they use, that this is like the practices, the way that they worship. And so when you look at something from Jorunn's angle, he's using different words, maybe words that make you uncomfortable. It's a different way of looking at the same truth, like turning the stone to look at things in a different manner. And there's those people who are really fixated on the words and the way that it's always been explained, that it's like a rose by any other name smells just as sweet. So I feel like that's really what Jorunn is for me, is that part of society that's like, am I if I don't use the same words as you, but I'm agreeing with you, are we agreeing or are we going to disagree on that?
And he's like trying to clear his name with people that have been looking at that rock from one direction for so long.
Yeah.
Okay, quick, and we're gonna come over next chapter. It is gonna be an hour. Wow, who'd have thought? Next chapter will be in captivity. Candor will be leading it. We're gonna come here in like probably 1 or 2 minutes, but I gotta check in with Evan. Have you been able to look at your own rock from a different point of view? Are you starting to like this a little bit more?
No, not particularly. But we'll get there.
I do have a question. If this is like, again, working with some kids today, 2 of them cried because they couldn't draw what was in their head. I did not know how to answer that other than to tell them I'm not a good illustrator and a lot of things come to my imagination. What
was the question though?
My question for you, hold on.
No, what was their question?
Oh, it was more of a statement. They were crying and they were saying, I can't draw what's in my head. So with that comes a question that Dylan has for Evan. Stick with me, dude. When you get to, because there's something about this that you're seeing in your mind that you're not seeing on this page. What is then the process to work through it? I mean, because clearly you're not just staring at it. You have done some things to it. Like, what is the process to like really start to bring that to life slowly but surely?
That's a tough question.
I need it for next week because I have another
class. A lot of it depends on what the success metrics are. But to put it simply, when there's that kind of like a delta between what you see and what you want it to be in your head, it's best to think of it as like the execution that you're putting out there, the output is not matching your desired level of taste. Because anyone can like anything, anyone has their own predilections, but when you don't like your own work, it's usually because your tastes are at a level that are higher than you can execute at that point in time. And that's not like a talent thing or anything like that. It's just that as we grow, especially as an artist, as someone who creates things, your taste is going to grow at the same time as your ability, your technical abilities, and it's rare that they're going to grow at the same rate
Mm-hmm.
as you continue to expose yourself, and you it comes back to, you compare everything that you make to the creations of your heroes and the people you look up to, or the things that you really enjoy consuming. So when my art doesn't look like Kim Jong-il's, then I go into self-flagellation mode. But that's not really helpful, except as like a data point that you can break down and say, okay, what is it about that I like so much that is missing here? And it's a bad comparison because this is nothing like his work, but
the whole
that's the
concept
idea.
is your taste is growing faster than your skill to be able to
Yeah.
bring it to life, right? And it
Yeah,
can
I
cause
think
this.
that's
I'm doing my best to be like, okay, I'm getting ready to talk to a second grader next week. So it's like when your taste is growing like this and your skill isn't, what are the things you as an illustrator would do if you were in my shoes? Like, because for instance, I see something like you start bringing in that figure in the back that might have not much to do with this whole, like, do you kind of start working on something smaller and give yourself, your mind kind of time to noodle on?
You can, yeah, that can be helpful. And in general, I say, you want to stay pulled back as long as possible, because if it doesn't work as an image when it's this big, it's not going to work when you zoom in and noodle that person really well, so they're super well rendered.
Mhm.
It needs to work pulled back first and foremost. But yeah, that kind of like getting into that kind of zen groove can definitely help unlock some things. Sometimes you just need to go for a walk and take a step away from it. But if you're talking about talking to second graders or younger about
Please.
art and the frustration of not being able to match what's in their head or imagination right away every time, I'll let you know when I have a good answer. I mean, I struggle with that with my 5-year-old a lot. She's almost 6 now. And she loves to draw things, and she loves to draw things her way, and she's fortunately never someone who punishes herself when the drawings don't come out the way she wanted. But I think that started when we were always embracing the happy accidents. Oh, we don't, it's not what you intended, but and I like it better that way. Or this is fun, let's see where it goes. Or if you don't feel like you can draw this particular Disney princess exactly the way she looks, right? Well, let's take a look and sit down with a still image of her and see how can we break it down into really easy to follow gestures. And so we go back to like basic construction. I don't know. It's
pull
really
from
tough. It's going to vary from kid to kid, and it's an age where it's just really difficult to say embrace the suck and practice.
I'll do my best to say that next week.
Yeah.
If I were to weigh in too, I actually find it really encouraging that a kid would cry. Because if they can't bring their imagination to life and they don't care, they probably will never care, and they'll probably never pursue the skill. Like it does speak of a desire to be able to do that. And if they take that desire and they start doing some of the things that everyone's talking about, working on the skill to be able to capture their taste, then great. If they're not crying over their art, I mean, that's okay. But I think the tears are
showing that they care. Yeah.
Yeah.
I dig that. Okay, I'm gonna do that because literally I was thinking today, I'm like, I'm causing this kid to cry right now. So this helped me, if anything. Speaking of help me, horrible segue. We're getting to the next chapter. Just so we can kind of finish up, hopefully a little after 5 Eastern time today. You still good on time, Kurt, or are you gonna have to whip through this? Okay, cool. So we've seen these two guys talk to each other. We've BT dubs. 1 second, just come back to it if you're watching. Can you zoom out just real quick, Evan?
Yeah.
Let's give this guy some love in the comments. Man, I love this stuff.
Beautiful.
God, I love it. And it's like, while you sit and noodle, I love this little dragon that you drew in the back. Dragon, bird, whatever it is.
You tell us what that is, Matt.
Yeah. Well, it's called a scorch. And it's one of the predators that you'd find in Bastunia. It's very, very dragon-like. Certainly, I've described it as like Moltres, as a Pokemon.
Speaking my language, also.
Yep.
Great scorch, Evan. If you guys love what Evan's doing, throw in the comments. Evan loves words of affirmation. It is his love language, along with silence. We're getting back to our chapter 16. We just heard Jorunn and Pendelve chatting with each other. We're seeing it's like Jorunn is, "Do you believe me, Pendelve?" So now we're going to go to a point of view from someone that definitely doesn't believe Jorunn, and that is Emblem Cyrus Candor, chapter 16, Captivity. Take it away.
Chapter 16. The rain persisted until the darkest hour of night. From the shelter of a god's pavilion, 2 witnesses watched the clouds march on, ushering their pealing thunder over the horizon. For a little while, the world stood still, but for the steady trickle of soppy rain dripping off trees, off eaves, off slate roofs, off the lips of sagging tents, and off strands of wiry beard on a man hunched over, snoring, with his head in his hands in a pillory. By the light of morning, Emblem Candor and his pangolin beast Nipper noticed that much of the Jester's white coating on his face had washed away. While his body remained unnaturally pale, his hair matched the sunrise, attuned to the bright red color. The god's eyes jumped to an eight-tailed fire fox as it sauntered out of the woods. Venus. Following the small beast came 2 larger ones. First, a shaggy orange and black battering ram with stone armor. Atta. Next, a broad-hatted fungus monstrosity swishing a vibrant plume of tail feathers. Without alerting the beast, Nipper scampered out the back of the pavilion, taking the longer but obscured path to the barracks. There, a company of emblems would slowly be awakening for the day. They would have gone to sleep with visions of the morning hunt, none of them anticipating that their quarries would show up on their doorstep.
"Guard!"
Jorunn hollered. Candor stayed wary of a trap.
"No subterfuge. You have my word,"
the Jester added. This only set the emblem further on edge. Candor did not show himself. Instead, from the hidden confines of the pavilion, he shouted his instructions to Jorunn. "I have aura sight. A single false move and I'll put you down where you stand. You even think about..."
"Tell Beacon Sorrento that I have accepted my fate. I summoned my beasts."
"I mean it, Jester," he said, spitting the final word like a curse.
"And I mean it, Crest."
"I am Emblem Candor," the young god corrected. "If that name doesn't mean anything to you, it will soon. It's the name of the man who caught you, the man who will soon end you."
"And I am Jorunn Gimir. It means the one who loves."
By then, Cyrus Candor estimated that Nipper would be arriving at the barracks. Within seconds, 10 of his fellows would be roused from their beds. If they were not already awake, his shift ended at sunrise, which fast approached. The 2 emblems set to relieve him should be dressed, fed, and on their way. He did not need to keep Jorunn the Jester occupied for long. All Candor had to do was allow him to keep talking his driveling nonsense and avoid scaring him. So long as he was not spooked, the god reckoned he wouldn't try anything hostile. The seconds dragged on. He fended off the attack of self-rebuke where he admonished himself for insisting on standing solitary guard. He wanted his men rested, all of them, ready for an intense hunt. It had not crossed his mind that Jorunn may actually accept his fate and summon his beasts. Candor could not believe his luck. Even hearing the words come from the captive's mouth and seeing his 3 beasts with his own 2 eyes. It must be a trick, an ambush, a rescue attempt. More things he had failed to foresee out of misguided notions of honor. Protocol insisted emblems travel in pairs. By trying to appear equally as capable as 2 men, he would suffer the humiliation of losing their captive. "Calm down. Breathe. Don't jump to conclusions. If it wasn't a trick, then maybe Beacon Sereno's lesson on guilt was more true than he knew. She taught him that people will do crazy, sacrificial things to alleviate their guilt, even when they had a whole world to escape off into and a substantial head start. Guilt will drive a man to turn himself in. 12 murders and a town destroyed. 12 murders of fathers, mothers, a child, members of the bandit family he once belonged to, and a few transients, which death woke up his conscience. What changed between victim 11 and 12? Another possibility occurred to Candor. Fame, notoriety, recognition. Jorunn had once lived a meaningful life. But Beacon Sereno was a crest. Rumor had it, Jester long before that nickname was the shoe-in to become an emblem. And eventually the beacon of order. To have lived in such high esteem, regarded by the Eldweiser himself as a notable member of society, only to fall to the most deplorable deaths, a life wasted, and now falsely grasping at meaning. Vandalism was one thing, killing was another. But mass murder for the sake of attention went well beyond Candor's concept of demented. Suddenly, he could not wait to have this man's beast in confinement so he could put a tight noose around his neck. Emblem Pierce, a man with dark hair, prominent cheekbones, and a permanently furrowed brow, charged into the pavilion along with his two callings. Waddle, a colorful rooster beast with a vibrant patchwork, and Model, a black and white swine totem with a short, prehensile trunk. Closely following them was a slathering Nipper, and then Dannon. The senior emblem was round-faced and dark-skinned as always, accompanied by Gavian, his crimson-eyed loon calling. Gavian was well known about the Waterlands for its unparalleled speed on land, water, and air. What the beast lacked in ferocity, it redeemed in a chase. Should their quarry escape, the company of emblems would need only follow Gavian's tremolo. Its wavering call that rivaled even the deafening volume of Cadden's Azigra alarm. Emblems pierced Dannon and Candor, and their beasts fanned out, keeping their distance. If Jorunn tried something, it would technically be 7-on-4. But pound for pound, the comparison was laughable. Even Vunis, who appeared a mere pipsqueak next to Ada, had tails the size of Waddle and Gavian, and was similar in size to Nipper and Model. The three men together did not weigh as much as Jorunn, who looked to be pushing 30 stone. They were like flies buzzing vultures, down to the unconcerned manner with which they were regarded.
Ooh, well maneuvered, Crests. You three work great as a team.
Jorunn complimented.
How did you surround me so quickly?
The Jester raised his head and flashed his captors a genuine smile.
I remember you from before,
he said to Nipper.
You blasted me pretty good. Can you do anything else besides, what was the Parser's word for it, auric projectiles?
Close, but no.
Pendelve said, appearing from the wooded area adjacent to the square. His Cayman beast Luke walked with him alongside the antlered wolf, Chugach. Emblem Camlor had met those two already, but had yet to become acquainted with his third. Despite the legends surrounding the Parser and the consensus that he was on the side of order, Candor found the mystery surrounding the Parser and his beast disconcerting. In fact, he found his whole presence in that moment alarming. The way he moved, as if knowing without a doubt that Jorunn, a 12-time killer, meant no harm. He joined the perimeter with altogether too much chumminess for Candor's comfort, inserting himself into the middle of a tense moment with a piece of conversation.
Still, you know my work.
Yes, astute one,
Jorunn said with respect.
You keep your mind organized. I do too much hard living upstairs to say the same. I'm glad you're here. I would like you to weigh in on something for me.
Let's hear it.
Can you determine a calling's mastery by sight alone?
Pendelve shook his head and said,
Definitely not.
The Parser got Candor's attention with his eyes. He nodded reassuringly and with one hand made a gesture with a clear meaning. Let's keep him talking. To Jorunn, he continued.
I know Adder has aura control with auric projection. You said projectiles before, a forgivable mistake. Pretty effective skill using those two together. I have yet to name all 72 combinations for those who have awakened second masteries. Does Venus have two as well? And
Yes, in fact.
Jorunn answered.
They are both able to blow bubbles out of their ears.
That's the one. What's the other?
They can blow bubbles from another place.
Handy.
Pendelve said, smirking. He turned his attention to the emblems.
And what are your beast masteries?
He asked of the emblems. He repeated the gesture from before, encouraging the men to keep the conversation going.
And if you don't like the name, if you don't know the name, describe it.
Emblem Pierce answered first.
Waddle can blast aura like Nipper. Model can shrink.
Pendelve nodded with interest.
How about your beast?
He asked Emblem Dannon. No answer readily came. The man's own dark eyes and his loon beast's crimson ones remained fixed on Jorunn. So intent was his focus on their captive that he showed no signs of having heard Pendelve's question. All at once, the time of answering questions passed. They had stalled long enough. The rest of the company charged into the square in formation. 9 emblems and then 9 callings joined the other 10, counting Pendelve and his, to make an indomitable force of 28. For 1 second to the next, Candor went from puffing his chest to pumping his fists. The balance of power shifted heavily in their favor. He had no further reason to delay. On his signal, the beacon of orders force converged on drawn beasts, swiftly shackling and subduing them. Within the minute, all 3 beasts stood in chains. The emblems spread out, each manning a length of chain connected at the center to the captives. They worked together, so any false step attempted by Ada, Venus, or would be easily counteracted by their collective strength. Emblem Candor had succeeded. The Jester's beasts were in custody. With a wide sneer on his face, they began toward the wharf.
Oh, every time, man, it's the voice makes the scene. Well, I'm also going to get to the scene, but it's like you get this intenseness, right? So Jorunn's callings come. He basically calls them in and surrenders, right? I would say, Matt, I'm curious your thoughts here, right? With what we know of the 3-part structure. Or I'm sorry, the 5-part structure. I know there's the 3 acts, but with what we know of the 5-part structure, you have set the scene, you have inciting incident, kicks things off, you have slap 1, all hope is lost, slap 2, and then climax. Would you say at this moment in this, we're getting close to that slap 1? It's like this guy's beasts come in to basically give themselves up, and jerk Cyrus Candor gets to bring him to custody.
You know, if the story was told maybe a slightly different way, with a little bit less behind the scenes jumping from character to character, like if we had never heard from Jorunn, and even this conversation between Pendelve and Jorunn hadn't really happened. Let's say we told the story exclusively from like Saw's standpoint or even Candor's standpoint. Then fully, yeah, I think this is a clear slap 1. Be that we know, it kind of defies the structure. I had a hard time
because it's multiple perspectives.
Yeah, and multiple perspectives can maintain the structure. I think you brought up Guardians of the Galaxy one time, where everybody's 5-part structure sort of synchronizes in interesting ways.
So good,
and yeah, beautifully done. I mean, that's a well told story.
I think if anyone wants to see the superhero genre, which is also a genre of Blake Snyder, I know a lot of people hate it, but the superhero genre, if you want to see it done well, following this structure, Guardians of the Galaxy 1 is incredible because they all have their own unique arc, and they're like, it's going on at the same time, yet it fits with the story. So definitely check it out and follow. If you'd like to know what that like arc structure is, feel free to reach out to us. We love talking about this stuff. I guess I just wanted to say for both of you, Matt, the description of this, right, where I'm like listening to Kurt talk and I can see the 3 callings come out. I can see their immensity in comparison to all these other ones. Amazing. Applaud you. And then Kurt, just the voice on it. I mean, even when you say third is stone, even it just gets me. I'm like, this is a Western standoff. I just wish I could have seen bullets fly, but for those curious, we get to watch them later in this book. So kudos to you. Hats off, Kurt.
Yeah, great stuff, man.
Do you feel, Kurt, before I go back to Matt, do you feel like you're coming into the character more and more as you go in? Is there things that you really like to show as this character now that you've now practiced them, what, 10 times at least?
At least. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's over time, the voice has kind of like come into his own for sure. And I feel like some of these chapters where he's doing a lot more narrating is like thinking through, like I think of the character in Sin City, where he's just like, really like it's a dark setting, and he just kind of brings the whole vibe with how intense and dark his voice is. Like that's kind of where I kind of want to bring Candor, is like he's on a mission,
Yeah, a mission to the top. It's like you get to. It's cool to have this type of character, Matt, come in where it's like you're seeing him strive for something that's almost which one it is. Probably Kurt. It's like you're seeing him strive for something completely different. It's like these other people are trying to almost solve this case. He's like, no, I have my own trajectory here. So even in these small, like it seems like a simple scene, this dude just brings his callings to custody to basically say, take me in. Kurt, you do a really good job of like making it feel like I'm on the edge of my seat. Like, will something happen? And then nothing does. But it was intense without, like if you were there, it's probably less intense. One thing, I don't know if you guys feel this when you're doing voice acting, but Kurt, you just said you like kind of feel like you come into your own. There's now times when I do Jorunn and I'm like, am I not as intense with Jorunn, or am I just doing this so long that this feels normal? Do you guys get the same feeling? Matt, Kurt?
I see. I think that you've been pretty steady with it. You've been pretty consistent with it. So if that makes sense that you feel that way. Pendelve he's the main character, so he's a little bit less big and broad and conflicting in his characteristics. But I think you've been consistent. And for Candor, I think that Kurt has become, he's just, at the beginning we had a shape of a character, and now we have that same shape like filled in with color.
Last question to Kurt, and then we'll kind of wind down. Do you feel as you're saying them, you're like, it doesn't feel as intense as it was when I was first doing it because you've been doing it for so long, or do you still kind of have that same feeling when you're being Candor?
No, it feels more intense to me now, because I feel like in the beginning I was trying to kind of figure out the best tone and the best gravel. Yeah. And I feel like over time it's kind of coming to its own, and it feels a bit more intense. I remember early on in like the first couple, like there was times where in the back of my mind I'm like I'm not as like, it felt like it was swaying. Some moments it felt intense, other moments it felt like it was kind of slipping back into my own voice, and but I feel like for you too, like it's gotten more and more polished over time,
I feel like I've slowed down a bit with it more, which is nice, but it's like even when we were starting and it was Matt and I's cross-examination, I put myself on mute and I always go back to his first line of, my head is spinning. And I'm like, okay, if I can say that, then I know how to be Jorunn. But there's times I'm like, is it watered down? It's cool to know. I had a shit ton of fun. I'm allowed 2 swear words, I think, per hour. So I had a bunch of fun. That was my second one. We're excited to see. So Jorunn is now in custody. We're going to be taking him from the pillory to the hanging. What is that called? The what, Matt? The gallows?
The gallows, yeah.
He's going to have his own poem that he's put together. We're going to have Pendelve see what he can do to see if he can save this man. Yes, he could be innocent, but can he be saved? I think that's where we're at right now. If you're liking this story, as always, like and comment because it helps the social algorithm. If you really like this story, come check out our other social platforms. We're on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. If you really, really like this story, go to our website and pick up a copy. All the proceeds, just so you know, first $80,000 we make go directly back into this story, and we're halfway there. So this is I was joking with someone. I'm like, it's actually a true nonprofit, meaning there's no profit for me to see or my partners. So feel free to support. It goes to our illustrators. It goes to our video editors. Everything goes to them. Please feel free to support the cause. And while you're on the website, you can pick up cool shirts, hats like you see Matt wearing. You can pick up long sleeve sweatshirts, other books. You can bring your own kids calling to life. All support means something for the message we have of really like inspiring imagination and storytelling in the next generation so people can better understand themselves. If you love that stuff, we appreciate it. Thank you so much for those that have watched, and we will see you next week.
Yes, we will.
Yes, we will.
Yeah.